Welcome to another episode of Aliyah Money Talks. I'm thrilled today to be joined by Yecheskel Shortman, who Yecheskel is a software engineer at Microsoft and the founder of the great Facebook group, Achieving Financial Independence in Israel. Start us off by telling us about your Aliyah journey, and get going there.
Sure. I've been here for about 10 years with my family. We moved here with two kids, now we got three more. So we always feel like we're Olim Chadashim, and yet we also feel settled. I think we'll always be something in between. I work in technology, as you mentioned, but my passion is finance as well. So I got into that a long time ago. My bar mitzvah money,
Yeah.
my dad suggested investing it.
How did you start learning about finance and investing? How did that even, interest you?
I always loved, actually, it started, I remember one of my earliest memories of entrepreneurship was I used to buy these like big like cases of hot tamales and then I would sell them in grade school. I was in like, I don't know, third grade. I would sell them for 25 cents each and I'd make a profit. And I love that concept, like you could make money, this like this concept that you have control over your financial destiny as opposed to like the government owes you a job sort of a thing. The other government owes you some sort of ability to make money. I love this idea that I can control it. So I remember that back, when I was younger, and ever since then it was something exciting for me. And my bar mitzvah money, my dad suggested investing in, and I did. I put it all in one stock, AT&T.
AT&T
Is not my current. Yeah, that is not my current advice. So that was one mistake I learned from. And then at age 15, I rode the coattails of somebody who like was featured on magazine covers, like you name it, Wall Street Journal, Forbes. This guy was a 14-year-old. I was 15, and he would day trade penny stocks.
Penny stocks.
And I rode his coattails. I had no skills whatsoever, but I rode his coattails, and I thought that day trading penny stocks was the way to get rich. I don't know if it sounds familiar, with the Bitcoin, everybody talks about, oh, if you only get into Bitcoin, you'll get rich.
Billionaire overnight,
So that's
right?
what I thought about penny stocks. And I was rich. I was a 15-year-old who was legit rich. I remember one day I made $24,000
Wow.
in one day. And then I lost it all.
Lost it.
And that's how I learned that day trading penny stocks is not a sure thing. And with all these mistakes that I learned, I finally got into the right way to do things. My dad was old school. He still is. I'm the technologist in the family. And he clips newspaper and magazine articles. He would clip out these articles, really basics of investing. The concepts that I like to teach. Just like you said before, my background is not in finance, and what I know are really just basics. But these are basics that I think I see a lot of people don't know, and I've been trying to teach it for many, many years. And that really is a lot of the impetus for this group that I started. The idea is to try to teach people all these things that I've learned over the years. And so, yeah, newspaper articles. And ever since then, it's been a passion. I've been following this financial independence subculture, if you will.
Right.
And I've gotten very much into that.
Okay, so let's focus right into that and on what we really want to kind of focus on today, which is what is financial independence?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, it's usually people might see the acronym FIRE, and that's often used in the same breath. And I do want to differentiate between financial independence and FIRE. FIRE means financial independence, retire early, and I don't really think a lot of us really feel a need to retire early, especially in our circle, so to speak. The Olim, Anglo Olim. I think a lot of us really like the structure of working. So that is not necessarily a part of it.
Okay.
What is the FI part of it, the financial independence? I think the idea is that when people are making decisions, that the decisions that they make are independent of financial considerations within reason, obviously. Obviously, somebody says, I am interested in buying a yacht and I don't want money to be a factor. That's not really what we're talking about. And we'll actually get to in a minute the concept that, I think it's important to mention that these concepts of financial independence, these principles that people in these communities tend to espouse, I believe that they are both the way to become wealthy and also the way wealthy, I guess I'm using interchangeably with financial independence. They're the way to become financially independent, and they're also a way to stay financially independent. There are many famous cases, Mike Tyson, what's his name, Elton John, a lot of famous celebrities who went into bankruptcy despite the absurd amount of money that they made. And the idea that is that these are principles that help people to live a life of financial independence, of not having to consider finance as much when they are making their decisions. And once somebody reaches that point, they could live their best life and not have to worry about finances. So there is like a group of principles, and I guess we could get into what those principles are at a high level, and talk about like, well, what exactly is it? So yeah, everybody has their own definition.
Yeah.
I would boil it down to number one, you want to be deliberate with your spending. So know what you're spending. Very often that means having a budget. For most people, I think that's a critical element. Uh, Another concept is you have to risk money to make money. So you're not going to become financially independent, most likely, if you are keeping your money in the bank. If you're getting interest on a bank account, that's not really the way to do it. You have to risk your money. And obviously, you should be accepting the amount of risk that you're comfortable with. But the idea is that you can't do it without accepting any risk. And Next, I would say this is a little optional, but it's nice to be a little bit hacky. A lot of people in these circles like to be a little hacky. They like to like find a
Cheap
way
ways
to
to do
like
things. Yeah.
maximize. Exactly. And I find that fun. Not everybody finds that fun,
Right.
so that's why I'm saying that's optional. You could read what other people do. You could ignore it altogether. And then lastly, this is the fun part, I think. It's very simple. The theory is that there's an amount of money that you can have that effectively guarantees you a secure retirement. And that's not because, let's say somebody wants, let's say 200,000 shekels a year, and they expect 40 years of retirement. So they multiply the two together and say, okay, 8 million shekels, that's my goal.
Right.
It's not that. You don't need 8 million shekels. The fun part is that you can work backwards using something called the 4% rule, or effectively what you really need is just a target number that is 25 times the amount that you want to be able to spend every year. And the theory goes, and it's a relatively strong theory. There are no guarantees, but it's a relatively strong theory. It's been time tested that there is basically no historical scenario where if you do this, if you spend 4% of your portfolio, the amount of money that you spend that amount per year, you basically won't run out of money. It's extremely unlikely that you'll run out of money. It's extremely likely that your portfolio will only grow. So when you take all those concepts together and you put them together, now you have a target amount to reach, which hopefully will, once you reach that point, you can now say you are financially independent.
Okay, so let's take a step back, and if we kind of nail down there on the specifics, we have to get to a target place. We have to get to a point where we've saved up enough, we've invested up enough, and that we reach some level of financial independence. If you look at it from an Israeli perspective, from somebody who's made Aliyah, would you say that it's harder to achieve in Israel? I mean, we talk about higher expenses here. We talk about outside of the high tech sector, lower income in many different sectors in Israel. Doesn't that necessarily make it much harder to achieve financial independence in Israel, or not?
That's a great question. I think yes and no. I think it's a very valid point. Israel is expensive, and there's no denying that it is relatively expensive. But I think there are a few mitigations that are worth pointing out. All countries need tax revenue, and military encouraging its citizens to save for retirement, and every country does their own mix of how to encourage different things. Some do more revenue from this angle than that angle, and you don't always necessarily see how much of that really is yours. And I think it's interesting in Israel because in Israel, when you get your tlush, when you get your pay stub, you see a lot of the money comes off of your salary. Um, but it's not really all going to the government. It's not all taxes. You do have to pay for national health insurance and national insurance, but a lot of that money is still yours. And so, from that perspective of a lot of costs to live in this country, from the government, it's true. But also, don't forget that you have these concepts of Keren Ishtamut,
Pension.
you have Keren Pensia. Exactly. The pension, that's something that really helps you in retirement. And really, you need to consider that when you're looking at your financial independence goal. You get to subtract that. You get to say, hey, this is money that's already taxed even. And that reduces the amount that I need to save from in my personal account. You have Keren Ishtamut, which is so awesome.
Yeah.
It is such a great vehicle. Anytime somebody does not contribute to their Keren Ishtamut when they can, or draws down their Keren Ishtamut, a kitten dies. It is such a great vehicle in terms of tax savings, in terms of encouraging you to save, in terms of getting free money from your company, effectively a match. They talk in America about, for example, a 401k match.
Yeah.
So this is a
Similar,
match,
right?
and it is such a great concept. And so scrutinize your pay slip and take a look at those things. That money basically comes right back to you. One is more direct than the other. Keren Ishtamut is a little bit more direct, but effectively they're both your money. Also, yeah, things are expensive here compared to other countries. Compared to America, I think it's a bigger contrast. But I mean, I was just abroad in Germany and Switzerland. Things were super expensive. I mean, chapstick was 7.5 euros, and Ben and Jerry's was the equivalent of 36 shekels, deodorant 20 shekels. It is expensive to live here, and it makes sense why. There are many reasons
Right.
why. That's not the goal of our talk here, but we are not as bad as many other countries, and we should appreciate that we really can do it. I just want to end and talking about that question, mentioning that there are so many testimonials of people who have done financial independence, like applied these principles, and these people have come from backgrounds that you wouldn't believe.
Right.
Well, you would, but people wouldn't believe. Just people who make such a low salary, people who have so many kids, and you just wouldn't expect that they can pull it off. But there was a concept in financial independence I didn't mention before. I hinted towards it. I didn't use the terminology, which is the savings rate.
Right.
And the idea is that if somebody can hit the right savings rate, what that means is that they have now reached a point where they are saving a certain percentage of how much they bring in. And it tells you two things. It tells you, A, how much you're saving, how much you're putting away, and B, that you are able to live with a certain level of frugality, a certain
Structure.
level of
Yeah.
frugality. Yeah, exactly. And we're not talking about living on, bread and water, but that certain level of structure, like you said, which really helps uh, to get somebody to the goal, and know that when they do hit that point of financial dependence, that is a comfortable level of spending for themselves. So it's like this concept of a savings rate kind of combines both what you're saving and what you're spending, and gives you a real good picture of how you're doing towards financial independence.
Got it. So somebody really likes this concept of financial independence. They want to live a life of more control over their financial picture, over their freedom, over their occupation, take more risk, as far as their work. Where do they start? What's the first step to looking at how do I achieve financial independence?
Yeah, that's a great question. So just to lead off, that I think that really is the hardest thing for people, because I've talked to countless people. I've written articles, I've talked one-on-one to people, I've done groups for communities, I've done groups at work, and by far the reason people always say, like, oh yeah, it makes sense, I got it, I understand, during the seminar, during the talk, but after the fact, I would say the vast majority don't take the next step, and the reason is because they don't know where to start. And I think that's a really good question. So I think that you have to know yourself to some extent, and know what is hard for you. And so just from the outset, you need to be able to say, okay, this I might not be as good at, so maybe I need to hire somebody else. There are people who can help somebody to take the first step if they can't do the steps that we've talked about and we're about to talk about. If they feel uncomfortable taking the next steps, I'd like to say that if you can get 80% of the way there, that is fantastic. If you can buy, a lot of people, they get hung up, for example, on let's say the investment part. Remember, we talked about one of the steps, I think it was the third step, was how we can try to invest so that we are moving towards, being hacky and trying to be intelligent with what we're doing. If somebody is a little bit uncomfortable with that, pay somebody, talk to somebody, and try to outsource whatever you feel like is too hard for you. But let's talk about the actual steps. What would somebody actually do? So I think it's similar to what we mentioned before. Firstly, you probably need a budget. And there are many tools for that. I think there's a new tool actually for Israelis that could integrate with Israeli accounts. But there are many international tools, American tools, for example,
apps
that are fantastic for this. Exactly. So make a budget, be deliberate in how much you're saving, be deliberate in how much you're spending. Then you have to open up a brokerage account. A brokerage account really just means an account that allows you to buy and sell stocks. Pretend I didn't say Stel because that's not a part of it.
At least.
Right. So we want to be able to buy stocks, and then you need to pick your stocks. And I mentioned that a moment ago that this is probably the part that feels most overwhelming for people, and keeps people from even opening the brokerage account, because then they say like, well, what am I going to buy? One step at a time. Open the brokerage account.
Make progress.
And then. Exactly, baby steps. I don't personally ever give financial advice, and I say this disclaimer a lot. So anybody who knows me, who's talked to me about this stuff, you've heard this many times. So this is not financial advice, but I will quote Warren Buffett, who is well known as one of the one of the best investors in the world. And his advice to the average investor is literally just to buy one stock. It's a Vanguard. He even gives an example of one, a Vanguard S&P 500 fund. You could look it up. The symbol is VOO. Again, I'm not recommending it. I'm just saying that it really, I would say that if somebody does that, they're already 80% of the way there.
Just explain that a little. Explain that a little bit. What do you mean by one stock? What is VOO? What is an ETF like that?
That's a great question. Yeah. So when somebody buys stock, they're effectively buying a piece of a company. You really own a piece of a company. You literally do. And so obviously if you buy one stock, then you have a very, very small part of that company. So you can buy, if you're a 13-year-old me, you buy one share of AT&T. I now own a tiny piece of AT&T. But the problem is that AT&T can go down, and over the years, AT&T has become less relevant, and we don't want to risk our money. You may hear investing and you think of risk. Well, that is exactly what we're trying to avoid. We don't want too much risk, and so the idea is, in order to avoid this risk, instead of buying one stock, we buy many stocks, and the idea is that if we believe that humanity is, or let's say, a sector or a country, but if we believe that people are, by and large, adding value to this world, creating things that make the world better, that creates wealth. That makes more wealth in the world. There literally is a bigger pie instead of you taking more of a limited pie. And so if we believe that the world is advancing, then if we buy the world, right? If we buy the world's stocks, we are now, this term is diversified. We are diversified. We now have many stocks, and if this company goes down, that company goes down, it happens. We don't care because we have many other companies. And if overall these companies are doing better and improving, and the stocks are going up, that's all we care about.
We get our share.
Do the stocks go up? Exactly. And the question that I think is probably in everybody's mind right now, do the stocks go up? Historically, yes. We can't predict the future, but historically, very much yes. The average return, the average return of the, I've been using the term like buying the stocks of the world. I'm going to now shift to saying buying the S&P 500, which is really just it's limiting it a little bit. It's not the world. It's the 500 biggest companies in America, but it's a good bellwether. It's a good proxy for the biggest companies in the world, and there are ways of doing it differently. You could buy from other countries as well, and maybe you should. But once again, the 80% rule. If you could get 80% of the way there, I think it's a fantastic first step. So the S&P 500, this group, this listing of the 500 biggest stocks in the world, in America, I'm sorry, they have historically returned about 10% every year over the long run. Of course, there have been many years that it has gone down, and it's a little upsetting to look at your stock portfolio and say, this hard-earned money of mine has gone down 30% even sometimes. It's a little upsetting, but over the long term, we're talking about 10% per year, which is hard to beat, not impossible to beat, but it is really fantastic, especially for something that's so hands-off, has so many benefits. And you asked, let's describe what is like a Vanguard ETF for an S&P 500. So once again, I mentioned that the S&P 500 is really just a list of the 500 biggest stocks in America, the 500 biggest companies in America. And so it's just a list. You can't buy a list. What does it mean to buy a list? Brokerage companies, investment companies, let's say you might have heard of Goldman Sachs, you might have heard of Vanguard, you might have heard of Fidelity, Schwab. Wow, yeah. You might have heard of Israeli companies. They do the same thing. You might have heard of Meitab Dash. Pretty much any major, I don't know if I could say most, but there's a very, very large number of brokerage houses that created their own fund where they buy the 500 biggest companies in America. They buy that list, everything on the list. They do not deviate. That is their charter. They buy the 500 biggest companies, and they create one stock, and that is effectively, let's say, one company, and you invest in that company, and that company owns those 500 biggest companies in America. So you are effectively buying those 500 biggest companies.
Buy it all with one purchase, that. Right?
Exactly.
So,
and it makes it easy.
Right. So if we're going to, go back into kind of the focus on financial independence, we talked a little bit about the controversy around the retirement early aspect of financial independence. Most people don't want to retire early. They're not going to be happy if they retire early. And that's not really the ultimate goal of building independence. Is financial independence an all or nothing thing? Is it something you get to this magical number and you can sail off into the sunset and do whatever you want? Or is it something you can leverage along the way? And as you build more financial dependence, you can kind of, achieve that for outcomes and for decisions you make financially today, or as soon as you start building that independence.
Yeah, I absolutely. I think that it is something that somebody could do step by step. It's not all or nothing. I like to think of wealth, of financial independence and wealth in general. I read this on an awesome site called Quora recently, actually, as something that gives us really two things. Not happiness, right? Money doesn't necessarily buy happiness. Money, I think, buys you opportunity and peace of mind. What do I mean by opportunity? Opportunity means, you see a let's say you want to buy a house, and let's say it's a good deal and you want to buy it now. Financial dependence gives you the opportunity to then say, I would like to buy that house. If somebody, let's say, wants to start a business, this is a really an even better example, because that's something that hopefully will help somebody grow their money. And so having this feeling of financial independence allows the person that opportunity to invest in their business. It opens up so many doors. And then, of course, the peace of mind. You sleep better at night. You sleep better at night knowing that you're not as concerned with where the next shekel is going to come from. And so are those two things an all or nothing thing? Of course, those two things are very much, an issue of gradients. So the more opportunity you have, the more peace of mind you have, I think most of us would agree, the better off you are. So I think that's a great question. I think a lot of people need to appreciate that really you don't have to go all in. And I think it harkens back to, this 80% rule. It doesn't even have to be 80%, but if you can try and move towards this, you are being more deliberate with your spending. You're being more deliberate with your savings. You're being more deliberate with what you do with that money that you've saved. And so you really get to grow it and get
Leverage it.
closer to financial independence.
Yeah.
So maybe it'll take you more time.
Yeah. So if you drill down that on a bit more, I mean, I think so many people, especially that I speak to, and friends, I'm sure you hear this all the time, as far as the balance between I want to buy a home today, I want to invest, I want to buy a new car, I want, there's all kinds of different trade-offs, and really finance is very much a decision. Personal finance is all about trade-offs, and your decision around what trade-off you make is going to be way different than the decision I make. But we all have to make trade-offs. So how do we balance it? Somebody who's really on board and says, I really do want to pursue this independence. I want the ability to take more risks in my career, and I want the ability to kind of have freedom and say, hey, if I want to design a different schedule or do all kinds of these different opportunities that present themselves when you have more independence, how do you balance, kind of the short-term needs that are important to you versus, versus the real pursuit of financial independence, which can take a long, long time to achieve. So how do you balance that along the way?
Well, nobody wants to feel like they can. I once heard a story of this guy who sees somebody in some country taking it easy, doing a siesta. They're taking it easy in the middle of the day, and they say, "Oh, you're doing it all wrong." This guy's like an MBA from Harvard, and you're doing this all wrong. What do you do during the day? I fish. Okay, well, you're taking a siesta. You could be, making twice as much. You should be working now. He said, okay, tell me more. What could if I do that, then what? Okay, well, if you make twice as much, then you could buy a bigger boat. Okay, great. That sounds awesome. Okay, then what? Well, once you buy a bigger boat, then after another 5 years, you can then have a fleet of boats. So that sounds really great. Okay, so then what? He said another 10 years later, then you can have an international company. And he said, okay, and then what? And he said, okay, well, by this time you'll be about 65, and then you'll be old enough to retire. And he said, retire? What does that mean? He said, oh, then you'll be able to start taking siestas. So I think that it drives home the point that it's important to enjoy what we're doing, and sometimes it is natural that somebody might feel like being deliberate with their spending is at odds with financial independence. Like you said, it's a long journey. It does not happen overnight, and so I think that it's important to try our best. A lot of this is in our heads. The best thing that we can do, in my opinion, is to try to take them from being at odds with each other. I've intentionally not been using the term. I try not to say to be frugal too much, because it's really not necessarily about being frugal. It's really about being deliberate about your spending and your saving. And so if it's important to you to take a vacation during the year, I just took a vacation. I just took my daughter, and I think we're going to be going on another vacation. You're allowed to spend money. You're allowed to buy the things that you want to buy. There are a lot of, fantastic coaches who talk about the difference between wants and needs and help people really to get psychologically there. And that's not where my specialty is. What I like to do is try to help people just to appreciate that it's very often in our heads. And if we can try to get these two things out of conflict, that really is a win-win for us. How to do that, that's a different question. But I think, for example, buying a home. We live in Israel. In Israel, in this culture here surrounding us, you have not succeeded financially until you have bought your home. That is at odds with financial independence. That attitude is at odds with financial independence. That I will say pretty confidently. Because if somebody, and I'll make it very concrete, if somebody needs to buy a home, if that is a must, then they can't really be investing. If somebody is investing, remember sometimes even this diversified stock we talked about, which we gave an example of the S&P 500, one VOO, right? For example, that has gone down 30% per year in certain years in the history of it, and so a person who's saving up for buying a home has no business being in something like that.
With that money,
that is depressing.
Right? With the money they're saving for down payment, right?
Exactly. They have no business risking that money that they want to use to buy a home. And let's face it, if somebody's saving up to buy a home, the vast majority of us, including me, you really need all that you can save up. And so there really isn't, we're not wealthy enough to say like, okay, well, this is my stock portfolio and this
Right.
is my saving for home portfolio. If we could get them out of odds, out of being at odds with each other, I think that's the win. And the good news is we can. I think we really can. It's pretty easy, I think. And the simple tweak, very simple tweak. Instead of saying I need to buy a home, instead, what do I say? I say I would like to buy a home. Once I say that, I can risk that money in the stock market. I can buy the investments that I choose, including perhaps VOO. I can buy those things. And then if it goes up, this average 10% per year, woohoo. If it goes down 30% one year, okay, gamzu tova, I'm happy. And I think this is a good opportunity to mention my perspective when it does go down. I look at it as a club. The S&P 500, I see it as a good investment. Again, not investment advice, but I see it as a club. If I want what I see, this 10% per year that I anticipate that it will grow every year, I have to be okay with sometimes losing a lot of money. And recently, we've lost a lot of money. It's gone down a lot. I literally, when I look at it, I smile and I say Baruch Hashem. I really do. That is literally what I think and I say. It reminds me of Rabbi Akiva on Har HaBayit when he sees the
The fox.
foxes. Yeah, exactly. There's a religious anecdote about a rabbi on the Temple Mount who sees a fox and in the location of the Jewish temple that was destroyed. It's a sad sight, and he was happy. And the rabbi with him asked him, "Why are you happy? What gives?" And he said, there are two prophecies. One, that the temple will be destroyed and it's going to look terrible, and we're going to have foxes on the Temple Mount. And the other is that the Jewish temple, will be rebuilt. And so I see this one being fulfilled, and so it reminds me my hope for the latter. And lahavdil,
It's a good Jewish
when
comparison.
I
Yeah.
right,
Hmm.
yeah. Lahavdil, when I see the stock market going down, I am literally happy, and I can only do that because I have not said to myself, I must buy a home. Instead, I have said, and I have said, I would like to buy a home, and that is a goal. And actually, we're up to that right now. And hopefully, within about a year or two, we're hoping to buy a home. And the key word there is it's a hope. I am not disappointed. It probably was pushed off by the recent downturn. It's been pushed off by a year or two, and I'm okay with that. And the fact that I'm okay with it is how I was able to decouple this conflict that you were pointing out between wanting to achieve financial independence and also wanting certain things, especially in an
Right.
expensive country.
Yeah. Makes sense. So to conclude, this has been a lot of great information and great insights. I want to just talk about your Facebook group for a second because it's a small group, but it's a really active and well engaged group with lots of great information, lots of good questions, lots of good advice. It's unique in many of the Israel financial groups can be a little bit focused on complaining about certain things. They could be focused about, there could be a little bit more control from the admins as far as what information is and isn't allowed. Talk about why you started this Facebook group and how's it going?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, so the group is called, as you mentioned, Achieving Financial Independence Israel, and the idea came to me when I made Aliyah about 10 years ago, and I saw that there was a fantastic group that was for broader financial questions, and there was a lot of fantastic information there, but there were some challenges that I had there, especially when I was trying to find meaningful information about financial independence. We have certain givens, you and I, in our subculture of, financial independence. This is, a global movement, let's call it. We have certain givens, and a lot of the people in that group have different. They don't necessarily have those givens, and so it breeds a culture of talking about different things. Very often it's complaining about, the exchange rate, and, this isn't fair, and talking about how you have to buy a home, kind of the opposite of the, if I were to give advice, the advice that I would give, right? Exactly, the opposite of that. And I was frustrated by that, and I really wanted to talk to like-minded people, focus on achieving financial independence. And I didn't think I would be able to do that in that group. Sometimes there are some heavy hands in that group with the admins, and I completely, as somebody who has to, you know, work on keeping a group in good order, I completely understand the challenges, and it's not easy, and I completely get it. I think they're doing a fantastic job for what that group is. But for what we needed,
You're clearly referring to a single group. I'm talking about, groups in general,
yeah, groups in
okay. We don't
general,
have to call anybody
yeah,
out, by name or anything like
yeah,
that. But yeah,
exactly,
yeah. No, continue with your
exactly.
your
Thank you.
point.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, and maybe I was using singular when I really intended plural. But yeah, there are a lot of great groups out there, and the point is that I didn't really think there was anything out there that focused on financial independence, where there'd be a lot less noise. Noise not necessarily meaning, noise meaning meaningless, but meaningless within the context of achieving financial independence. Things that don't help us move towards that goal. And it was frustrating trying to have discussions relating to FI in those other groups. So that's why I started it, and we grew in the way that I was very happy with. I don't care for us to be big. I don't care. What I really care about is that we have meaningful discussion, and we do.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy about that. We have a lot of fantastic information there, and the appreciation. Obviously, I'm proud of the guides that I wrote when I started it. I
I'll link to
used my
those.
commute to
Yeah.
work every day. Thank you. Yeah, I use my commute to work, writing articles, explaining things from my perspective, and I like those. I'm proud of those. I think I've written very well. But ever since other people have joined, including you, Reuven Shirazi, he's an
Yeah, it's
admin
great.
there.
Yeah.
You guys have written information that far eclipses my information. You explain it better. You have a much better platform. Mine is really
Different.
just
Yeah.
text in. Yeah,
We're all
I,
bringing
I
more.
really
Yeah.
appreciate exactly. Everybody brings it from their own perspective in their own way, and you know Aaron Shukadowitz and his way of presenting information, and Reuven Shirazi's way of presenting information, Yechezkel Shomer, Nadav Ellenson, his
It's
way of
great.
presenting information. Each of them provide tremendous value, and I really love it. Makes me smile looking at the group. I'm so happy with all the help that people are giving there. And another thing, these people really just want to help. You just really want to help. Ruvain, we've talked over lunch about, ambitions. His ambition is to help. I love, this isn't my day job.
Right.
I do software engineering. People love to help. I love this group. It's a fantastic group. There are a lot of contributors in addition. I want to call out, Jay Abramoff and Idan Einav. He did some
Yeah. Great
videos
stuff.
also.
Yeah.
Shlomo and Elisha Bronner
Yeah.
contribute a lot of questions and answers. So it's a fun group. We've even had meetups. That's another thing that groups that are larger might have a little bit more challenges doing. We're a little bit of a smaller community, and I really appreciated we were able to do meetups. It's great to,
Yeah.
this is my second time putting your face to the name. Like I already know you now. We've
Yeah.
already had a chance to sit down. It was really nice. So I love the group. It's a fantastic community. The only time that we try to have a heavy hand is when people post things that are either self-promotional or are not related to financial independence.
Yeah.
Other than that, and also people, really important to me that people are nice. I'm really not okay with things like,
Anger.
even like laugh reacting to something that's serious.
Yeah.
Other than those three things, everything goes, and I really love the group. I
Awesome.
think it's really fantastic.
Amazing. This has been really helpful. Thank you for all the work that you do, and for starting this foundation and getting a lot of this information out there for so many people. Really appreciate you being on the show, and I look forward to more discussions in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Aaron. This was a lot of fun, and thanks for everything that you do.
Awesome. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.